Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and my listeners get the story behind every book. I have a really interesting gentleman to introduce you to today. His name is Dr. Jack Suk Kwan Tan, and he's here to talk about his book, My Mother's Love, Growing My Life from Zero to Success. Now, Dr. Tan, I know that you and I have talked about, I've used your full Chinese name, Dr. Jack Suk Kwan Tan, but I'm going to call you Dr. Tan because that's your full name. And if our listeners are looking for your book, it will simply be under Jack Tan. Is that right?
Dr. Jack Tan, must put doctor in front, otherwise I don't know whether Amazon system can recognize or not. I try many times, so I know how to do it.
Wonderful.
You must put My Mother's Love, known in the full name, by Dr. Jack Tan, T-A-N. Then you will see the book.
Now, the book is an autobiography, and it's a story about you and your life. You started out your life from humble beginnings. You were a sick child. You have 3 degrees now. You've been very successful in the banking business. Why did you decide to write the book?
Basically, it started on 15 November 2019. I was invited by Tsinghua University Professor Lee. So I asked him in the email, how would you know me? He said, it is through LinkedIn platform. We look at your profile, we compare with 4,000 over people because basically they need somebody who can speak 2 languages. That means bilingualism. In this case, I speak Mandarin, I speak English, read, write, and also articulation in depth, that's to say. So with that, at Beijing International Airports, they were, I suppose, those students were from Tsinghua University. They surveyed me, asked me whether I want to help them on the survey. So in the end, I look at them, very polite. They can speak quite 2 languages, whatever. So I participate in the survey. It was on loneliness and success. So I write in English and Chinese for them. And before I reached Pan Pacific Hotel, the people already voted in the survey, about 10 of 10. So I at the hotel, I think I better do something. So the recollection was, my memory went back to 1950. In those days, Singapore were very poor. So that was a beginning. So the word loneliness I used because what I worry was I was born on 1st January that year. That year happened to be a national service year for the mere citizens to do national service in armed forces. So in itself, our time was taken away to do defense contribution to the government. So I started with develop determination, with a positive attitude to achieve my set goal and the two objectives, being the first onset goal fall within my model called asset and liability management model as a takeaway for readers. And readers can look at that and replicate for their respective environment. They could be able to do even better than the author. That is what I expected. So in itself, the whole model with the way I move, in the end, at chapter 9 conclusion, as the model to be taken away as a benefit of buying this book. So that comprises all 9 principles, but we just concentrate on the goal and 2 objectives with a measurement. Every 3 months, quarterly, I must check. In 1965 onwards, when I started my banking career in 1975, later on I was with the Chase Manhattan Bank, today known as JP Morgan Chase. So I spent half of my career time in American banks. And ultimately, I go to Singapore Bank to contribute at their request. So the goal must be very certain, and you pursue the goal, you have to be very certain. It got to be crystal clear. That is a goal I want to go. So what was the goal? The goal was be determined to finish and get your first degree called tertiary education. So the education plays a very important part in the model. So 2 objectives. What were the 2 objectives? Meaning, by the end of it, whatever goal you have, the 2 objectives should be you must save a lot of income. Meaning, I use Warren Buffett's principle, spend below your income. So that is 1. Then go into banking. I really thank God. Blessing, I was in banking before even I completed my national service obligations under Singapore law. Then I began my national service. The training programs under the hot sun, day and night, was very tough. Then we got to be very disciplined. So then we say, I was telling you in chapter 1, the two objectives. One is saving. So I got to see the qualitative. Did I save below my income? If I saved enough, meaning in Singapore we have compulsory savings under government law. That we call it CPF, Central Provident Funds. That is under law we must save. But that saving, to me, under the current or under the inflation, is not enough to bring us for retirement. So those people, if based on that, don't care about the rest, they will not success. The success depends on your education, your work, your saving, your investment. So all this comprises in my model, and the reader will take away with this model. Every year, I will have a PowerPoint, one goal, two objectives is achievable. So what are the measurements? I will slot my PowerPoint into my photo album. I wouldn't just put in the photo album and wait for the end of the year, then check. No, you got to be very proactively measure it. So the measure will be every 3 months. The timeline for me is check. Are you achieving your objectives under the goal? If it's not, what are you going to improve it? So that is called remedial action. So it is proactively managing it based on what you set. So the 9th chapter will give you the 9 principles. I mentioned about loneliness in chapter 2 and 3, 4, and 5. Why? Because I was born with diarrhea. So I do not know any side effect to me. But I was very determined. Even in serving my national service, I achieved all the objectives. So in the end, I graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce, major in economics, minor in finance, because I want to go into banking. So I must achieve this. So when it comes to chapter 6, I will manage my tertiary education before enlisted to perform my national service obligations. So that is one of the principles. Then 7, you really need to be commencement of my banking career as my dream careers, like moving hurdles of knowledge and languages. So all this, I have measurement. I set a very high standard for me, but I gradually achieve it. The knowledge is adding on. That was the reason why in banking as a head, I studied my MBA from a UK university, and I got full distinction. After that, I wanted to get, as I promised my father, I wanted to get a doctorate degree from a good Australian university. So I did. I got it. So on education itself, I basically achieved as per my plan. But obviously, the time I committed was tremendous. Imagine every day I got to work 4 to 5 hours for my parents. Where to find time to read or do your homework? In the end, what do? Since I'm washing spring sprouts, the process takes about 5 hours sitting in front of a urn with a lot of water and cleaning with a piece of wood on the surface. Sitting down there, I have no book. So what should I do? To buy time, I use memory. I exercise my memory to enhance my understanding of the study. So those are objectives. Your goal is to get a good results, but the objective must support your goal. So I do that to buy time. So it was very challenging, and that itself may also prepare me for my career in banking and finance. And the central bank in the end also asked me to be a qualified trainer and a part-time lecturer for some university collaborated with Singapore Central Bank's Institute of Banking and Finance. So in itself, if you don't have a plan, all this won't happen. And to be able to be accepted by managers, vice presidents, or senior vice presidents.
You know, your book is so inspirational because your story,
they come from overseas.
But your story is so inspirational and it's so encouraging, and you give guidelines, you give practical ideas. This is a book for any audience, anyone who is looking for a plan for success. These 9 principles that you've outlined in your book make such good sense. And you've given not only technical guidelines and practical, accessible advice, but you also share family stories. And I'm sure that our listeners are wondering where they can find the book. So let me tell them. They can find it. You've mentioned earlier, Dr. Tan, that they can find it on Amazon. Let me give the full title of the book, My Mother's Love, Growing My Life from Zero to Success, by Dr. Jack, Jack, Tan, Tan. Put that in your search feature. Click on it. The book will come right up. You can buy it on that page, and there you go. Now, you have a website that I think you would like to share with our listeners as well. Would you give me that website address?
Yes, that is my domain name website to connect and search for this book. That is under is lowercasing www dot, or undercasing smaller letter, not capital letter, DRJACK, no spacing, TAN, all lowercasing, .com. Then you click, you will go to the end at the publishing company's website. Then you can find the pricing and all that and arranging with them.
Excellent. Now, you've been giving us all kinds of information and talking about the 9 principles. When our listeners purchase a copy of My Mother's Love,
it will be there.
Growing My Life from Zero to Success, when they purchase your book and they sit down and they read it and they close the back cover either electronically or physically for the last time, what specifically do you want that reader to take away from your book?
The reader must have inspiration themselves, what they want to achieve. Then after reading from mine, if they're convinced, by the end of it, chapter 8 and 9, So then the whole asset and liability management model for the reader to take away. And the reader can customize into their own platform and modify from there. And the main thing is they must have a very clear goal and determination. From a goal, they split into 2 objectives. No point having many objectives because in the end, you are not able to manage, and they will project into discouragement. This book is not a motivational book, but we can see, you look at progressively how the author planned it. And this is through my life from primary school, secondary school, pre-university and university, and go into banking career. And central bank asked me to be a trainer, a qualified trainer. I have to support Singapore government by contributing my knowledge under the challenging environment. And they get me in, they got me in the central bank. When I said they means the central bank institute got me in 1988. And I helped them until they have a new chapter, the new charter for the Institute of Banking and Finance. So from there, the local universities and polytechnics take over. That is to say, those lecturers or professors in the university, they know a lot of knowledge. However, they may lack experience. So that is the model by a government has a gap over there. So it's not up to me to comment. What I do is, after reading the book, how to measure the performance based on the 2 objectives every year. So in other words, this is a lifelong development for yourself. That's why you see the book cover is a butterfly, a very beautiful butterfly. There are reasons on that. So butterfly is beautiful, but life is very short, but need determination from laying eggs, turn into cocoon for 2 weeks. During the 2 weeks, internal development will not give you a guarantee of no flaws. My experience under the observation where I have this plant with small little oranges, the butterfly will come to lay eggs. I leave it to them, but I just observe the development. One case was the butterfly from cocoon turned into butterfly. But the sad thing was where the butterfly tried to squeeze out, and out of 2 wings, 1 fell. So that is a risk. In our life, we also have risk. And that incident, I felt saddened because the butterfly in the end died. So in whatever plan, if you are not determined and not measuring it properly, you may discourage. So for my case, there isn't any discouragement because I lay out everything. I have 2,000 over books at home. It's not because I just read and don't practice. No, I read and practice. So from the book itself, the 9 chapters will share all the 9 principles. By the end, you manage asset liability management model as a take away benefits from the book. It is an assurance in constant growing my life from zero to life success. So what do we define success?
You are so inspirational and such a wonderful example of your own work. This plan obviously will work, but it requires dedication, and it requires following the plan, and it requires doing it on a regular basis. This is not something that you can just try and not really work at. It requires dedication, and it requires setting realistic goals, and it requires looking at those objectives. And if you're not meeting them, then what do you need to do? Dr. Tan, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Books on Air. It's just been so enlightening.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope my explanation is clear. However, buy the book, then you read. Every chapter will give you one principle, and every principle will be connected together from a previous principle. And by the end of it, the whole model is in your hand. Then I also share some of the PowerPoint with the goal explaining into 2 objectives. What are the measurements by the end of a year? So itself, you're going to set a requirement that every 3 months, if you are talking about investment, you must invest according to the goal objectives. There will be performance measurement. Maybe you say, I want to have an investment return of 10%. But that year, after first quarter, it only rise to 3%. A shortfall of 7 is for the reader to find out why. You'll find a solution. I'm sure Warren Buffett's value investing based on 4 M's method was a very clear investment philosophy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. Remember, you can find My Mother's Love, Growing My Life from Zero to Success by Dr. Jack Tan on Amazon. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join me for our next Books on Air podcast, because remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for listening.